And a lot of people was, confused with soul purpose. A lot of people didn't understand, the ending, of course, because we didn't really get too much into everything. So, as I said, the agenda would pick up where we left off in soul purpose. And there's a lot to understand. It's a lot to know. So, as I talked about on YouTube, it's really important to understand that the information, of course, that I'm putting out is from my research, my understanding, from what I have, discovered in my years of research and what I feel like is happening and what this is about. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to, listen to my research, to even pay for it, and to be, invested and engaged in what I have, discovered and what we have discovered basically over the years. So it's a lot of information. And, I have so many videos out and there's so much to talk about that, you can't spend a lifetime and get into everything. It's just not possible. So I appreciate you guys taking the time and really paying attention and supporting. But we have to look. We got to treat everything like a crime scene, like a huge investigation, because that's basically what it is. It's a huge investigation into our past and our purpose, basically. So when we go and look in the past, as I talked about before, see so many ancient civilizations, ancient people talking about beings coming from the sky. There's no ancient civilization you can find that is not talking about this, that has any type of real civilization. So all of them were obsessed with beings coming from the sky. They was obsessed with astrology and the stars and the planets. Many planets they shouldn't even have known about. They was obsessed with it. Their culture was revolved around spirituality. Everything was about preparing for those beings and preparing for the afterlife. And when we see, these civilizations and these cultures, that was it. You had the normal stuff you would need to sustain life. But when we start looking at these people dailies, like when we look at Islam, we see people work and the way they work and what they're working for contributes to the religion. It contributes to the religion and they don't really allow you to do anything that's outside of the religion. So the whole society is based upon the religion and what you do has to reflect that. So this was just no religion back then. It was just nobody preaching and nobody trying to indoctrinate. It was life. It was as if they knew. So that's the thing we got to look at and understand, what was the difference between them and us? The main difference is these people acted as if they knew. We look across the world, we see all these different ancient civilizations worshiping the same things by different names, different looks, but it's the same stuff. It's pertaining to the sun, it's pertaining to the body, pertaining to beings from the sky. It's the same stuff. We see structures and temples, monuments dedicated to spirituality. So you got to think about it. We got these civilizations. Everything is basically good. Everything is structured. The people know what they're doing. They're going about their daily lives. It wasn't so much as if they was trying to figure something out or even progress as a people as far as we do today as a civilization, trying to grow, trying to expand and build. It was just, this was it. And it was this way because they knew, because they understood that something put them there. It was something coming down. It was some beings from above. They understood spirituality. They understood death. They understood everything. And that's how they operated. And it's like they knew the point of them being there. And when you think about, what I talked about before, expanding consciousness, and that being here, as I talked about in Soul Purpose, will be for the benefit of experiences so that you can expand consciousness. You understand? You can't experience something you never experienced before, if you get it. So it's like the more we grow, the more we experience. So if you look at the separation from back then, we call it primitive. There was living primitive, brick, mud huts, so on and so forth. Today we live brick as well, but we have, stucco, we have, siding and laminates and all kinds of beautiful homes and completely different luxurious way of life. Totally separate. It's a new experience. Societies, new experience. I mean, look at, hip hop, our culture. Everything is entirely new experience. So you got to think, do you believe that the culture we have today couldn't have been achieved, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 1,000 years ago? What new information could have came, as I alluded to this before, what could have came to change our society? And I'm not trying to confuse you and say it as if some beings came and gave us new information. Everything was always here. It was known, but the energy was different. You understand? We wasn't trying to grow. Everything was about death, the afterlife, moving forward, growing spiritually. We wasn't trying to grow physically and experience new things on a physical level. Everything was spiritual. Think about this. So as a Christian, if Jesus came, right? Let's say you're a practicing Christian, you're trying to figure this thing out. Jesus comes down and he tells you and a couple other people, and he tells you everything is legit. The Bible is legit. Everything in there is right. Make sure you follow the laws and commandments and live your life the way God wants you to. What do you do after that? What do you do? So those three people would live by that Bible. They would live by it because they seen Jesus and they know he exists. They understand their purpose and point, and they would live the way the Bible wants them to live. And they would go out and preach and teach or what have you. But if you do that, you forfeit the experience of the rest of the world. You forfeit the experience that so many different people get to have because they're not religious or even religious people. You have to look at the world and so many things that's here. And if our purpose was to, as I said, just worship this God, what would be the point of all this stuff being here? And why would it be even, capable of being made if that's our point and purpose is to serve and worship? There's so many fun things, so many feelings of joy, so many emotions you wouldn't get to experience just being focused on this one singular spiritual thing and dedicating your life every day to getting up in the morning and serving this book, this God, for what? Living this life that you're not even supposed to be in the city. So you wouldn't even be living in the city around people. You would be living somewhere outside of the city, away from sin. And you would be just trying to build the civilizations, as I said before, basically like the Mormons or basically like the Amish, I should say. So, we have a similar type of situation with the monks. The monks live monasteries away from the people. They only come down into the villages to talk and teach or to, ask for food. And that's when they come down. They don't really interact too much in, the rest of the world. So, that's why it's a big deal. If you ever been in an airport, you've seen monks. It's because they start coming into a different understanding of material, which they're not supposed to be, dabbing on. So I remember when I was in Thailand and I was speaking with the monks, that was something that they was talking about trying to understand the nature of material and our spiritual purpose with it, because you have to look at the amazing stuff we have in there. There's a spiritualness to it, and it's why are we able to experience this? What was it created for? Why is this here? And there's so many things that make sense that you can't just ignore because of spirituality. So even when we go back and look at the ancient civilizations of people, like they had to ask themselves the same question, if it was the same as us. So you look at us and we say, well, we're superstitious. We're following a religion. We haven't been proven that it's true. We just think and we're acting on what we've been taught. So go back then and think about those civilizations of people. No religion. Why would they be dedicating their life to this spirituality unless they knew, unless they seen? There's no point for you to spend your entire life looking up at the sky and looking up, at the stars for what? Unless you knew something came from there. You had to see something. So it's not even, to me, a debate that something was coming here. We're going to get into this in this video, but couldn't be their purpose. And they had to understand that. And that's why we see what we see in the ancient world, and why I've traveled the world and been to some of these places to see how these people lived and why they just abandoned it to go live, this new way of life away from spirituality, when so much of the ancient world is consumed by it. It doesn't really fit or make sense. And you got to ask yourself, why? What was the point of that? Why did they change? Why did they, go away from spirituality? Why did they switch up? What was the big thing that happened? So this gets into the question that so many people ask: if God is not real, who do we worship? Who do we worship? Who are we supposed to pray to? And you have to think about that. And you got to look at how complex we are and that we have free will. If you creating a complex people and giving them free will to do what? To just simply worship you, it don't make sense. And you can't make rules upon that because it would defeat the purpose of being an all powerful creator and being able to create. And if you create something like us for simply worship, why not program us with just that? We wake up in the morning, we eat, we shit, we praise, we go to sleep. And, that's the cycle. Why not program us to do just that? Why give us free will to go about, move about, and figure out and think and dwell, on things, on life? That would be something that's completely against your main agenda, which would be for us to simply worship and beg or what have you. Doesn't make sense. It's like building a machine that you build a car wash. And the purpose of the car wash is to wash cars. That's its purpose, to make dirty cars clean. Why would you then throw in a program to that car wash to make cars dirty? It don't make sense. It defeats the purpose of the car wash. The point of the car wash is to clean. Why would you even program it or make it even capable of making cars dirty? It doesn't make sense. So we have to look at this and look at, as I said, how complex we are and understand that it's not, we were put here to just simply worship. It's not that we was put here with a purpose even, because we're not eternal in the flesh. That would be stupid to make something that is going to completely be gone soon to sit here for a limited amount of time to do what? For the flesh or for material that's not eternal. So you have civilizations living, worshiping, looking up at the stars and planets or what have you. And, we're going to leave it right here and come back to this because the agenda kind of, connects the dots. So, we have the white man emerges, right? He emerges and basically begins to come in and blend in and mix in with different civilizations. And we see that everything changes after the conquest of Kemet. That's a big deal to note. It's a big thing. Don't think about Sumeria. This is why Kemet, it seems like everything starts with Kemet and why it's so important to them and why we see the pyramid on the dollar bill and we look at Freemasonry and everything like that. Everything is about them and us, but they are us. So Kemet falls. The world changes after that. Everything changes. And I have to reiterate that this was planned, but it's deeper as we'll get into. Kemet falls, right? So remember, everybody was coming into Kemet. Chinese talk about coming into Kemet. India talk about coming into Kemet. Africans, Europeans, everybody came into Kemet to learn. It was a learning center. So you conquer Kemet, you shut it down. What do? You cut off spirituality and you cut off learning. Plain and simple. That is cut off now. The people have what they have. Whatever they got, that's what they got. So that's now taken over and controlled. The world begins to change. They go out and start conquering, mixing in with different civilizations, marrying themselves and conquering themselves onto thrones and making deals and treaties with people. We know, as I said, the Chinese, they went over there and they made a deal with the Chinese. They started mixing in with the Chinese and mixing in with agents. They went into India, the Aryans we're talking about, conquered in the Indus Valley and into India, started mixing in with those people, gave us the Persians and the Arabs. So we have this, white man emerged out of nowhere, conquest going on. And we know they was there for a long time, but it was at this specific point that everything changed. The Persians come in, as I said, let in the back door by the Greeks, and then everything changes. They leave the old world behind. All those ancient ruins we find, they leave them behind. And we talked about with the Taino people to go in there and they create the, Dominicans and Hispanics or what have you. And it's this huge conquest. We have a lot of peoples wiped out. And we have a lot of people that we know that was there for a long time and in certain places wiped out and, mixed in with the Europeans to create who we see there today. So originally we know we was there until conquest. So it's this huge campaign of conquest, world domination, beginning with the ancient Egyptians, and then everything just spreads out. And we see this conquest over hundreds, thousands of years, complete dominance, dominance by one people, these Europeans, these white folks. And we know once they establish religion, I'm going to go back and forth, as you'll see. I'm not going to go in order for a reason. So I'm going to jump ahead and jump back, but it'll make sense. But we see, as I talk about, this domination, and we see the established religion take place. Now, again, let's go back and look what happened. You have, when Kemet fell, spirituality is gone. It's completely different. And the learning center, which was Kemet, gone. The ancient civilizations, the ruins where people was living, they got ran from out of there. So over time, that spirituality was lost, and it was just like stories being passed down. And there's a reason, like it's going to make sense. So what did they do? Religion was created. One of the reasons they basically used it to get rid of all old spirituality. So once Christianity came into play, remember, they outlawed everything. And if you was doing alchemy, which was something you would want to know, which anything that was considered real power was outlawed. It was considered witchcraft or, demonology. That's why he did the book. So you had alchemy being outlawed. If you were a philosopher, this was philosophy, even though we would consider you being conscious today. But philosophy, being a philosopher back then, was like being a witch. It was like being a sorcerer. If you was a philosopher, you had to be on one side and be known to be, to that one side. A philosophy and just advice only, not in alchemy or real spirituality or astrology or what have you. What happened to the people who tried to step up and be real, philosophers and alchemists? They were killed. They were burned at the stake. And you got to understand why this stuff was done. And they used religion to try to justify all this, just like they did with slavery. But religion came so they can go about and say, you're doing this, you got to die. You got to stop or you got to die. So anything that was attached to spirituality, that can be attached to spirituality, that can be used in any type of way to show any true, real spirituality, was done away with the Bible, with Christianity. So think about it. What did they do?